Hey everyone, yet another Piers Morgan episode. I swear this wasn't my plan. I thought I was done with Piers, at least for the time being. And just so you don't think this is becoming a Piers Morgan clip channel, I have begun working on a Christmas-themed documentary episode that I should hopefully be releasing in time for, well, Christmas. But as I was saying, I thought I was done with Piers, and then I saw he had gay Christian billionaire Peter Thiel on. Not that his sexuality matters, it's just kind of fun to say gay Christian billionaire. I didn't know much about Peter Thiel. It's Thiel, right? Thiel or Thiel. Going in, other than that he was this shadowy tech billionaire who had a history with Elon Musk and was mentioned a lot in the lead up to the recent presidential election because of his past support for Vice President-elect. I know President-elect is a thing. Is Vice President-elect a thing? Anyway, J.D. Vance. Thiel had hired Vance to work at his global investment firm back in 2017, and he later went on to help support his political career, including donating $15 million to Vance's 2022 Ohio Senate campaign. But what made me want to respond to his appearance on Piers Morgan is the fact that he commented on two topics that really interest me: atheism, being a non-believer myself, and life extension. I remember a long time ago, could have been a couple of decades ago now, I saw Aubrey de Grey being interviewed for a documentary. He's a British biomedical gerontologist who believes that most likely we'll eventually be able to slow, defeat, or even reverse aging via advancements in medicine and tech. I found his ideas interesting, and every once in a while I would find myself giving some passing thought to longevity science, but it probably wasn't until a couple of years ago that I really started to take a deeper interest. I started following people like Harvard scientist David Sinclair and trying to keep tabs on the latest breakthroughs and news coming out of the field, etc. as a layman. I was really hopeful and inspired at first, but now I approach it all with a healthy skepticism. There's a lot of interesting possibilities or irons in the fire, so to speak. The use of pre-existing drugs like metformin and rapamycin, NAD-boosting supplements, potential stem cell therapies, etc., etc. But I'm not holding my breath that will successfully stop or reverse aging anytime soon, although I would absolutely love to be proven wrong. You present me with a chalice of immortality, I'm gonna chug that shit down like an ice-cold Mexican Coke on a hot summer day. Why Mexican Coke? Cane sugar. You gotta watch out for that high fructose corn syrup. Anyway, I think Ray Kurzweil, is it Kurzweil or Kurzweil, thinks that we'll reach longevity escape velocity by the year 2029. I guess we'll see, it's not that far off. But Peter Thiel is also very interested in life extension or longevity science, and he's actually donated money to Aubrey de Grey's Methuselah Mouse Prize Foundation. Sounds like a cartoon character. I think the following quote is from 2006. "Rapid advances in biological science foretell of a treasure trove of discoveries this century, including dramatically improved health and longevity for all. I'm backing Dr. Aubrey de Grey because I believe that his revolutionary approach to aging research will accelerate this process, allowing many people alive today to enjoy radically longer and healthier lives for themselves and their loved ones." And apparently, as of 2017, he's donated $7 million to the foundation, less than half of what he donated to J.D. Vance's Senate campaign. Priorities, people. But I'm joking. Kinda, not really. But Piers asked him about his interest in life extension, and Thiel actually surprisingly sounded a little jaded or pessimistic. It sounded like he thought the research wasn't advancing as he had hoped, but he still thought it was an important field of study. That's me loosely paraphrasing. In the clip I'm about to play, Piers asks him if he plans on having himself cryogenically frozen, and he ends his response to the question by making a strange claim about quote-unquote modern atheism.
What do you want to do when you die? Do you want to freeze yourself just in case they find a way of reviving you down the road?
I would like to. Again, I don't think it's inconsistent for me to be both Christian and to believe in a personal resurrection in Christianity, and to push science at the same time. And I used to always feel a little bit guilty about it, like you're hedging your bets, or like you don't really believe in one or the other if you believe in both. And then, but then I think modern atheism has collapsed to where they believe in neither. They believe in neither science,
which is so depressing.
Nor religion.
So he claims modern atheism or atheists don't believe in either science or religion. I find this to be such a bizarre claim. In general, I think people tend to associate atheism and secularism, rightfully in my opinion, as often going hand in hand with a scientific worldview. So the claim modern atheism doesn't believe in or rejects science seems very strange to me. All I can think of is that this is some thinly veiled nod to the conservative argument that the left rejects science or facts by insisting that trans women are women. Matt Walsh had that whole What is a Woman movie, and Piers Morgan himself and others have been doing a lot of complaining about trans women competing in women's sports, etc. Often people also associate atheism and secularism with the left, so maybe that's what Peter Thiel is getting at. Strange, though. And unless it somehow ties into the topic of religion, I try to not get too political on the show, but I'm a left-leaning guy. I like to think of myself as being supportive of or an ally of the LGBTQ community, trying to keep up with all the letters. The whole thing with trans women in women's sports or competing against biological women, I get why it's a topic of debate, but to be honest, I don't give it a lot of thought personally. I don't lose any sleep over it. It obviously bothers Piers a lot. He's constantly, going on about it. But claiming that atheists don't believe in or have given up on science is nuts to me. If that's what he was getting at, I'm a non-believer, atheist, agnostic atheist, choose your label, who values science, facts, data, empirical truth. Do I think there's a difference between biological females and trans women? Yeah, if there wasn't, there wouldn't be a need to distinguish the difference with the trans prefix. There's obviously biological differences, but I can both acknowledge that and at the same time respect trans women and trans people in general, and accept and respect the gender roles they embrace, their preferred pronouns, etc., etc. But there was another weird moment where Peter Thiel uttered something that both baffled me because of how illogical the statement seemed, and also, again, kind of offended me a bit personally as a non-believer. He suggested that atheists wouldn't be able to further longevity science because they'd be too disturbed or distracted by their own mortality to focus on the work. I'm paraphrasing, but I'll play the clip now.
And so,
yeah. I mean, I'm a Catholic, but I agree with you. Why wouldn't you make every, I hope that I'm right, that there's a God out there and there's a life after that's fantastic. I hope that's right. But I mean, I don't see any reason why you couldn't just as a side bet, freeze yourself. Sounds to me like you might consider it.
Sure. I think I'm actually signed up for. I'm signed up for a cryonics policy. I don't particularly think this works, but it was again more just almost an ideological statement that I want to do more, and we should be trying to do more in all of these different dimensions. But yeah, look, I think the way I would relate it to Christianity is that perhaps there is no rational way to think about one's mortality, and so if you are an atheist who believes that this is the only life you have and then it will be over, the way you deal with it is not rationally by thinking about it. If you think about it, you will go insane.
Right.
You deal with it by avoiding it, by not thinking about it.
Yes.
And then this sort of psychological avoidance mechanism, one of the things it results in is you don't even do the science anymore. At some point, it's like to actually work really hard on the science. Yeah, rationally, you're correct. You should be working on the science in order to live forever. But you'd have to think about your death too much to work on the science, and that would disturb you so much. So I think the atheists are not even able to work on the science anymore.
I have to admit, it was kind of refreshing to hear Piers display some humility, and instead of saying there must be a god or a superior mind out there, as he usually does, he admits in a sense, and I'm paraphrasing, drink every time I say paraphrasing, as long as you're not driving, that he doesn't know for certain, but rather he hopes he's right, that there's a god out there and a life after this. I think that's very human and relatable. That's how I feel. I'd like to believe there's something more after this too, but I'm just skeptical or have very strong doubts based on the evidence or lack thereof. But then Peter Thiel says perhaps, and in quotes, there is no rational way to think about one's mortality, and goes on to suggest that if you're an atheist, you deal with your own mortality by avoiding it, not thinking about it, and so working on the science would be impossible for an atheist because you'd be thinking about or disturbed by the idea of your own death too much to do the work. To me, that is such a batshit crazy thing to say and shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how atheists tend to think, at least the ones I know and have listened to, and I can also speak from personal experience being a non-believer myself. From what I've observed, atheists in general tend to think about existential matters, including their own mortality, quite a bit. That's how many of us became atheists, by wrestling with or giving serious thought to life's big questions and applying reason and critical thought to the supernatural faith claims of man-made religions, etc. Drink every time I say etc. too. I think there's a kernel of truth in the idea that contemplating your own mortality, absent the belief in a god or an afterlife, can be daunting. I've talked openly about my own periods of existential crisis on the show ad nauseum. But there's also many atheists, atheist scientists no less, like Richard Dawkins, the late great Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, even though he chooses not to embrace the atheist label, who seem to have or have had, past tense in the case of Carl Sagan, a very healthy and grounded view of their own mortality, viewing death as a natural part of the life cycle. I used to think the majority of scientists were atheists, but in fairness, that isn't necessarily true. I believe it is in the case of some specific fields. There was a 1998 survey that found 72.2% of NAS biologists, National Academy of Sciences, identified as atheists and 20.8% identified as agnostic. Only 7% believed in a personal God. And then in general, according to some surveys, it's roughly half. A 2009 Pew Research poll found that 48% of scientists said they had no religious affiliation, which includes those who identify as atheist or agnostic. Then from Harvard Magazine, nearly 37% of professors at elite research schools like Harvard are atheist or agnostic. Scientists are generally less religious than the general population. So this idea that atheists can't study life extension or longevity science because they'd be too disturbed or distracted by their own mortality is bananas. Shitting in their pants and dropping beakers, running around the lab screaming. Couldn't you just as easily argue that since they don't believe in a life after this, that they'd be that much more motivated and enthusiastic about finding ways to extend the one life we do have? Not that I think a scientist's religious affiliation or lack thereof should matter. All that should matter is your professionalism, expertise, and dedication to the work. I'm just responding to Peter Thiel's bizarre, unhinged statement or comment regarding atheists. But that's it. That's gonna do it. Thank you everyone as always for listening. You guys know the drill. You can like the Facebook page, you can follow the show on Twitter or X, even though I'm not on, well, that's kind of a lie now. I've actually been on there a little more, kind of creeping and lurking, checking out other people's tweets, not necessarily posting too much myself, but you can follow me on Twitter or X. And if you'd like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/theweekindoubt and help support what I do for as little as 99 cents a month. All right, brothers and sisters, until next time.